welcome to today's video. I am Oz. I hope you're having a splendid day. In the last video I did upload with the sim racing stuff. We did unbox all of this, you can see. So we have the Podium DD2 wheelbase from Fanatec. We have the 918 RSR wheel. We have the Formula Carbon wheel. We have the Club Sport shifter, and we have the Heusinkveld Sprint pedals. And to my right, we have the GT1 Evo Cockpit from Sim-lab. And furthest to the right, we have the Sparco QRT seat. So the intention of today's video is to assemble all of this. So this is my first time, so I thought I'll walk you through the details and how I'm thinking when installing this, and hopefully it will look something like this but more sturdy and just not loose parts. So that is the intention of today's video. And the GT1 Evo Cockpit is an aluminium profile based cockpit. Usually these type of cockpits are called 80-20 aluminium profile rigs or cockpits, and we have different type of hardware that needs to go with this. We have brackets, we have T-nuts and bolts and so on and so on, and we have a million of those which we need to use then to assemble this. So that is the intention of today's video. I knew that my engineering degree would come to some help at some point in time in life, so today is one of those days. But before we continue the video, if you do like the content of the channel, do remember to subscribe to support me. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. But without any further ado, let's get on with the assembly. Let's talk about the different type of hardware that we have and the profiles. We have these type of aluminum profiles, so they do measure 80 millimeters in height. So from the bottom end to the top end, it's 80 millimeters, and 40 millimeters in width. So 80 millimeters times 40 millimeters. And then we also have this type of profile in the kit, and it is a 40 times 40 profile. And there might be other sim racing cockpits or other applications with aluminum profiles where we have 80-20 profiles. And as long as the widths of the things you're mounting together, etc., are compatible, then you won't have any issues, and you can mix and match depending on what type of peripherals you want to have. And while we are on the profiles, we have these caps. So these end caps will then cover the ends of the profiles, and as these are usually also cut in the factory, it is also very nice then to have these caps to cover that up. And we then do have something for the 40-40 profiles as well, and we do have these caps for the corner brackets, as you can see, very nicely done. We will get to the corner brackets in a bit, but what we use then to assemble everything together are mainly M8 bolts and M6 bolts, and we have these slot nuts then, so these are M8 and M6 as well. And as you can see, hopefully they have a spring loaded ball, which makes it easier than to mount these slot nuts into the slots of the profiles. So speaking of the assembly then, so we have these corner brackets that we will use. They will go into the slots, and as you can see, hopefully, I don't know, these have these type of tabs on both sides, so these will prevent the corner bracket to actually rotate, and that will give a more rigid structure if I make an example like so. So that is why we have these corner brackets then. So they have been coated in this nice looking black color, so it will mate together very nicely with the aluminum profiles. It would have been nice to see these in matte color, but that's the way it is. So what we essentially do is to insert the M8 bolt, in this case, into the corner bracket, and then the nut would be sitting inside the slot here and create that rigid structure. And usually brackets do not come with this triangular shape reinforcement, but as you can see, these brackets do have them. Let me just show you an example what I mean. So this is a constructional bracket used for whatever carpentry, etc. you would have. I have actually used these type of brackets when I did build our deck outside, and as you can see, these instead have a reinforcement in the corner here, so that has been solved in a different way. So this is a very rigid corner bracket as well, but this was just to give you an example of what this looks like. And we do also have these rubber feet which will mount on the underside of the frame, so where the frame meets the floor, but I'm not sure if I will mount these. I have ordered caster wheels which I'm waiting for the delivery. Hopefully they will come in the week, so I'm not sure if I will mount these or not, but these are also then included in the kit. With that said, let's get on with the assembly. Before I start the assembly of the cockpit, I just wanted to show you how the slot nut works. And as we talked about, we have this spring loaded ball, and these nuts can be inserted either from the ends of the profiles or from the top with the use of these balls then, hence why these are very handy that they come with the spring-loaded ball. So one option would then be, of course, to add the nut as such from the ends, and that is possible if we don't have anything covering the ends. If that is the case, we need to disassemble that part and then insert the nut into the profile. The other option we have then is to simply put the nut in as such and then push it into place, and as you can see, it went in without any issues. And the next step is then to position the nut correctly into the profile, and the nut will then self-center, and the reason for that is, let me show you. So as you can see, the nut has this profile in itself which matches the aluminum profile, and this will self-center the nut in the profile, and that is important so we don't damage any threads or the aluminum profile when we are torquing down the nut, because this is then centered and no force is then being put incorrectly into the nut damaging anything. So that is all good. With that said, let's get on with the installation. I will start with assembling the main frame. We are now at the back end of the cockpit. In the front we will have the wheelbase and the pedal set, but now we are in the area where the seat will be sitting. So we have these two 500mm long profiles which will then mount to these 1350mm profiles, creating the main frame. So one of these 500mm profiles will be sitting edge to edge with the longer profiles, and the other one will be determined by the seat bracket profiles, then the length of these, and that is what will happen. So I will time lapse this, and once we get to the positioning of the seat profiles, I'll show you what I need to do there, and then we'll continue the video in the same manner. So sit back and relax. We have now created the base frame with the longer profiles and the two 500mm 8040 profiles, and we have positioned them 500mm from the back side of this profile to the back side of this profile, because the two 4040 profiles will mount on top of these, and these are 500mm long, and they will be positioned just inside of the 1350mm long profiles going across, and we will use the corner brackets for these as well. So we will use four, one here, one here, one here, one here, and we will mount them on the inside so we have space to move these as long as possible. And as you remember, the corner brackets do have these rotational tabs, and in order for us to mount these tabs flush, in this case with the 4040 profile, we need to break off the tabs on the side that will meet the 4040 profile so the corner brackets can sit flush. So that is what we will be doing next. 4040 profiles for the seat mounts have now been tightened down, but I think that was a mistake. I need to loosen everything up and take the seat and the brackets and see how wide everything is, and then readjust and then retighten everything up. But that I will do later. For now, let's install the profiles that will hold the wheelbase, and these will go something like this, and they will be fastened down with the corner brackets, one on this side and one on this side, and obviously we will have similar on the other side as well. And for that we will use the slot nuts and the M8 bolts, and this as well we need to potentially adjust them depending on how we want it to sit compared to where the seat is. The seat will have seat sliders, so we will have some adjustment there as well. I did actually halt any further assembly of uprights or seats, etc., and that is because I wanted the caster wheels to be here before I continue that, because if we do have the uprights and the seats, it will make life very difficult for us to install the caster wheels or the rubber feet for that matter, because we need to turn the cockpit around in order for us to be able to install these parts then. So the caster wheels will be mounted with slot nuts that will go in on the underside of these longer profiles, and we have an M8 bolt then which will go through the caster wheel as such, and this will then be mounted from the underside into the longer frames. The rear caster wheel set I will mount somewhere along this line here, so I don't know, 100mm or so from the back end of the frame, and the front pair I will mount in between the upright for the pedal set and the upright for the wheelbase, so somewhere along this line here. So that is what we'll be doing next before we continue with the uprights for the wheelbase and the pedal set, etc., etc. The caster wheels are now installed and it was a really quick installation. The same goes with the rubber feet, but now we have the possibility to move this around. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if I will have this in the house or here in the garage. Either way, I would like to move this around as this will become a quite heavy rig with everything mounted, so I wanted to have the option of being mobile. The next is then to continue with the installation of the uprights for the wheelbase, and I have positioned the front slot nuts exactly 500 millimeters from the front of the frame to the front of the T-nut, so we have 500 millimeters on this distance here, and the same goes for the other side. This is just to have everything lined up properly. So that is what we'll be doing next, and then we'll continue with the rest of the stuff. Next is then to tackle where the pedals will be situated. So we have this massive base plate for the pedals included in the kit, but as I mentioned, then we will have Sparco seat sliders sitting on top of this, and on top of the Sparco seat sliders we will have a separate additional base plate where we'll mount the pedals to. But this specific piece here will mount in between the uprights that we have here, which is the next step to assemble, and the uprights for the wheelbase. So we have inserted slot nuts in these two front uprights, and I have slot nuts in the wheelbase uprights as well. So this base plate, hopefully you can see, has these slots which will then be mounted into these uprights, and we will have a screw securing the base plate on the front and on the rear on both of the sides to these uprights then. And with these slots we then have adjustability, moving this plate then forth and back depending then how tall we are, etc, etc. So this is something I think I have to experiment a little bit with on how to situate this, and then potentially also consider that we have the slider for the pedals as well. So what I will be doing next is then to tighten these two uprights down, and I have for now measured 160 millimeters from the front of the frame to the front of the front corner bracket, and as you can see we have one corner bracket here, one corner bracket on the other side, and then the same for the right side of the rig. So I will continue with tightening these down, and then we will tackle on how to install this big pedal base plate. Once the base plate is in place, the next step is then to mount the seat slider, and that is if you have the seat slider for your pedal base plate then. And these Sparco seat sliders, as you can see, do have some pre-drilled holes, and this is the rear end. I will call it the rear end and the front end, and we have 2 holes in the rear end and 2 holes in the front end. And in the base plate we do have holes for where we can actually position the corresponding holes for the seat slider, so it will be something like so. And what we will be doing is to first mount down the rear end of the seat sliders, and that is because we need to actually shift the slider backwards in order for us to reveal the holes here, so we can fasten the front end of the seat sliders as well. And to do that, the seat sliders do have a spring-loaded mechanism with a locking function, you could say. So at the moment I cannot move this around, but what we will do is, as you can see, these 2 pins will be aligned with the lever arm. So the lever arm have 2 holes, as you can see, on each side, and these holes will then, or the pins will go into the holes as such. And once we have both sides secured, when we pull this lever up, we will release an tension on that locking mechanism, making the upper portion of the seat slider to move independently of the lower portion, which then is fixed to this base plate. So what we will be doing is to secure the rear end with M8 bolts. Once that is done, we will put the lever in place, pull it upwards and push the seat slider backwards, and then mount down the front side of the seat slider to the base plate. So that is what we will be doing next. So I will start with the rear end as I just explained, and we have a washer and we have a locking nut which will go on the underside, so the M8 bolt will go in from the top. Then we'll take the washer and the locking nut and try to fasten this down a little bit and tightening it down, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side, and then we will move on forward. I will not fully tighten this down yet, just a little bit so we can move the slider backwards. I'll just double check that we are aligned with the holes here. Next, we will take the lever and position it in between these pins down, and you can adjust this by pulling it to actually make it wider if you have it in some base plate or some other fixture where these need to be more separated. Well, this simply goes in as such, and then we try to align the other side. And if I now pull this upwards, we will most likely be able to shift the seat slider towards the rear end. As you can see, we have now revealed the two holes for the front end of the seat slider, and now we can use our M8 bolts, washer and locking nut and lock the front end of the seat slider in place. The next step is then to mount the additional pedal base plate to the seat slider, and we have these spacers which have to be used because I think we need to offset this in order for us to be able to operate the lever here, and also it will give us some room to work under the plate when we are fastening the pedals as so. If that is not possible, we then have to remove the plate and then mount the pedals first and then mount the plate to the seat slider. And these spacers then we will use an M8 nut on the other side of the seat slider like so, and then we have countersunk holes in the plate itself where we have the specific bolts provided from Sim-lab to fasten the plate to the seat slider then. With the plate in place, it is time to mount the beautiful sprint pedals to the plate itself. I will use the bolts provided by Sim-lab in the kit because they are black and it will go better with the rig in overall. Heusinkveld do provide a kit with the bolts and nuts, etc. But the bolts do have this color. I prefer the black one over this color just to have a more cohesive or coherent color scheme on the rig. But I will reuse the nut and spacer provided by Heusinkveld to keep everything in place. And with regards to the spacing, it will not be the final one because I want to have everything set up, and then we will see what type of spacing we want to have, and my aim is to have this similar as possible to the MX-5. But for now I will just tighten everything down so it doesn't slide around, and then we will tackle the seat and the wheelbase. The pedals are now mounted to the additional base plate. As you can see, there is an offset now between the clutch, the brake and the acceleration pedal, and the reason for that is I actually measured on the MX-5 and the acceleration pedal is more or less sitting this much behind the brake pedal, as you can see, and hopefully this will work because usually on sim rigs then the brake pedal is very stiff compared to a real car, so hopefully we can depress this long enough in order for us to be able to do a proper heel and toe. If not, I have to reconsider. And the spacing between the acceleration pedal to the brake pedal and the brake pedal to the clutch pedal is similar to what I have on the MX-5 to have the experience as real as possible then. And also when I did shift the brake pedal and the clutch pedal to the rearward slots here, as you can see, previously they were on these slots here. I could reach in here and hold the nut and washer in place from under the plate, but this was not possible when I moved these two pedals to the rear slots then. So what I ended up doing then was to remove the seat slider from the base plate in order for me to be able to turn this whole assembly around in order for me to be able to mount these hardware into place for the brake and the clutch pedal. So we will see when we start to test everything if this will work or not. If not, then we will have to reconsider. And also with the heel plate, I don't think I need that. I was trying to test sit, so to speak, and see where my foot is on the brake and on the clutch and on the acceleration pedal, and they were sitting high enough for me to be similar to what I have on the car. If again then during testing we see I need to have my heel a little bit higher up, then we will mount the heel plate as well. And what I also did was to replace the bolts I first used for securing the seat sliders to the base plate, which is included in the OEM, is to use these longer ones compared to the shorter ones which I first started with, because these didn't thread enough into the locking nut holding the seat slider in place. So, and these longer ones are included by Sparco in the seat slider kit, so I have used that and the washers that were provided by Sparco. But for now we will move on backwards and start the assembly of the seat. For the assembly of the seat, in my case, we of course then have the seat itself, so it's the Sparco Evo L, and then we have these bucket seat brackets. We then also have the Sparco seat slider, and we have the 40/40 profiles, and this needs to be in a specific width to match the width of the seat. So what I thought I'll do to make my life a little bit simpler is to mount the seat slider to the 40/40 profile, then mount the seat bracket to the seat slider, and then actually remove the 40/40 profile and mount everything to the seat. And once those two assemblies then are mounted to the seat, I will then know exactly the width of this, and we can position everything back into place and screw down or bolt down the 40/40 profile to the rig itself. I don't know if it's the most efficient way or not. Don't laugh, don't judge. This is the first time I'm doing it in this type of scenario, so hopefully it will work out well and everything will bolt on rather quickly. Another big milestone met, so we have the seat in place and it feels nice. We have to of course potentially adjust a little bit with regards to the tilt and also the positioning of it, but all in all it feels good. I did center it as centered as I could in the rig by taking some reference point on the 80/40 profiles and on the 40/40 profiles on both sides, so the seat itself is sitting centered in the rig. And the bucket seat bracket I had to point outwards in the front. I don't know if this comes through, but here we have an overhang compared to the 40/40 profile, but on the rear end it is sitting edge to edge to the 40/40 profile. And I don't know if this has to do with the shape of the Evo L seat or not, but I had to do this in order for the 40/40 profiles to actually point straight in the rig. Otherwise they would be a little bit crooked, and that is nothing we want to have. Also, as you saw, I had to adjust the handle for the seat slider, so I had to bend it out for it to position properly in the pins in the seat slider. But as you can see, everything is working as expected. Next is then to assemble the optional DD1 brackets that will hold the wheelbase itself. So these will be sitting something like this in the cockpit or in the rig. So the uprights coming up from the rig, and we have these larger plates then that will mount to the uprights, and we have slot nuts that will go into the profiles of the uprights, and then we have M8 bolts that will secure this larger plate to the uprights as I just showed you. And as you can see, these larger plates do have longer slots, which gives us the opportunity to slide the wheelbase itself forth and back depending on how tall we are, the seating position we want to have, and so on. And these larger plates do have two holes which will be securing this shorter profile, and these are countersunk so they will not interfere with anything, and we have the appropriate bolts included in the kit to accommodate this. And also I need to mention that the width of this in total is manufactured in such way that it will fit in the GT1 Evo Cockpit with the DD wheelbase then from Fanatec. So if you have something else, this might not work with everything that is included in the kit. And on the side that will actually mount to the wheelbase itself, you can see we have a smaller plate with a slot with a radius to it, and this gives us the opportunity to actually tilt the wheelbase forth and back, depending, or up and down actually, depending on how we want to have the wheelbase sitting. And also, as you can see, we have two countersunk holes that will secure this plate to this shorter profile, and we also have similar M8 bolts that is included in the kit to secure this into place. And while I'm on the subject of the hardware, so we have M8 bolts included in the kit as well that will actually mount these smaller plates to the wheelbase, because the wheelbase do have holes for M8 bolts as well. And these washers were also included in the kit. I assume these are to be used on the side that will mount to the wheelbase, because the wheelbase do vibrate, do have jolts and so on, and potentially these bolts can get loose over time, hence why the washers are included. So this is the right side of the assembly, so with the smaller plate and the slot that has the radius that needs to point upwards, and the larger slots on these larger plates needs to point downwards. So this is the right side. So if you're sitting in the seat and looking at the wheelbase, this will be the right side. The next thing I will do is then to assemble the left side and show you how that is done. And what I also need to mention is that I will assemble these two pieces and then mount them to the rig itself, and then mount the wheelbase to the brackets. I think this is going to be easier if I'm just one person, instead of mounting these and then mounting the wheelbase wheelbase to these, and then lowering the whole assembly down and try to fiddle with the bolts that's holding everything in place in the cockpit. So that is how I will do it. I don't know if it's the right way of doing it or not. We will learn. If not, then I have to reconsider. The wheelbase is now finally secured to the cockpit. What is left to do as one of the final steps is to mount this 80/40 profile, which measures 400 millimeters, and that will go onto one of the uprights on the left side or on the right side. As you can see, I have inserted the slot nuts already here, and I have these two corner brackets already mounted, and this will then mount to the upright like so. And the purpose of this profile is then to hold this universal shifter bracket like that, and on top of this bracket we will then mount the Fanatec shifter like so, and then we can adjust this up and down and the shifter forth and back depending on our seating position and so on. But from an assembly point of view, this is more or less the last step we need to do with the rig itself. That was all for today's video. It was a long one. If you did stick around until the end, I hope it gave you some input of what it is for a first timer like me to assemble something like this. With that said, I need to disassemble some of the parts because she is a big and a heavy girl and we need to lift this inside the house. I think I need to disassemble the wheelbase and the seat for us to be able to carry it inside. But all in all, it was a quite straightforward assembly. It just needed some tinkering and some time, but we did reach the goal. If you have any questions at all with regards to the assembly or challenges or how I did solve stuff, do leave a comment in the comment sections below and I will try to answer them the best I can. And also, if you're a more seasoned sim racer, do tell me if I should have done something differently or other sim gear that I need to have a look at and so on. We are all here to share our experience and knowledge. So if you did like today's video, give it a big thumbs up. Do remember to subscribe. I will be uploading videos with the sim racing experience and sim racing equipment and so on, and also car related topics, tracking my MX-5 or hopefully other cars, car modifications, car detailing, and car related topics in general. With that said, take care and I will be seeing you on the next one.